intellectual emanation is in this sense. This is the analogy that Aquinas tries to suppose, and it comes from Augustine and I believe Boethius as well.
Okay,
yeah, Bogus, yeah.
Okay, beautiful. So, how are you? Intellectual emanation.
It's only just going to be like analogous to the way that this thing can be done. So.
Can you explain through analogy how intellectual emanation will work?
How intellectual emanation will work?
From the Father and the Son, for example.
So it's just going to be on the part of the mind itself. So the mind itself is going to conceive of itself as doing the thing.
Yep, exactly.
And then by reason of doing that, there's going to be some sort of possession.
When you say intellectual emanation, is there something happening from the Father which is distinct and then leading to the Son?
No. So for Aquinas, he would say that this is atemporal and infinitely present. So he just believes that infinitely present. So this is actually something that Ibn...
Sorry, sir. Say that again.
Infinitely present.
We are both saying it at the same time. Infinitely present.
Yeah. So the idea, right, is just, and this is from like classical, it's just classical understandings of metaphysics, both in the Islamic tradition as well as the Christian tradition, as you know. The idea is going to be that since God is going to be outside of time, these operations, these ad intra, meaning within, these ad intra operations of God are going. Pardon me.
You're doing right. You're doing good, Habibi. Keep going.
Yeah. So these ad intra operations on the part of God, right? There was not going to be a time in which the process began, and it should not be seen as a sort of process in any sense. There was no temporal succession of events. It's just simply for him is going to be the case, which is just like the idea of it is the case that God exists, rather than there's a point in time where God started to exist or that God continues to exist.
From my understanding, and both of you have said this before, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Aquinas believed in the divine simplicity, right?
Yes, he does.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Now, is the Father ontologically separate from the Son?
No.
Okay, fine. So the
and
Father.
by ontology, what do you mean?
So the Father and the Son are the same.
I just wanted to ask you, by ontology, what do you mean? Before you do the thing.
Now hold on. Is the Father ontologically separate from the Son?
What does that mean? Because I have an idea of ontology, right?
Are they separate entities?
Are they separate entities?
Yes.
If by entity you just mean existences, then no, they're not separate existences. No, they're not separate existences. So for Aquinas, the existence of the Father and the Son are going to be the same. However, the hypostasis, which is the underlying reality of the Father, the underlying reality of the Son.
Would it be fair to say that the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit are just names for the same thing?
They're not names for the same thing, no. They are names that are going to pick out specific underlying realities. Now, the hypostasis of the Father has the same existence, as Aquinas says, as the hypostasis of the Son, due to the idea that the existence of God is identical to the essence of God, of which you would agree, right? That existence and essence in God are the same.
There's difference of opinion among scholars.
I'm asking for your opinion.
No, but there's difference of opinion about
the reason why is the reason why I'm asking this question is because if you have a different notion or idea of these concepts like essence, existence, hypostasis, reality, so on, then we're obviously going to be talking past each other.
No, I agree.
Right, and because you agree, just because you agree, right now, could you please adopt a view that is either that you agree with the idea
of
that
what? No, I don't need to adopt.
You don't.
I can agnostic to that point.
Why would you be agnostic to whether God has existence and essence?
You've asked me the question about whether there's a distinction between essence and existence.
Yeah.
My response to that is, I've looked at different traditions about that, and I'm still making my mind.
So you don't know?
No, I haven't made up my mind on that.
So you don't know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's okay,
sure.
Right?
So I'm coming back to you now, and I'm asking you a question, which is that, is the Father a separate thing to the Son?
Is the Father a separate thing? No. And the reason why is because in Aquinas' scholastic theology, there are definitions of distinction. Now, just so that I don't become pedantic, right?
No, good.
You understand what a real distinction is, correct?
Explain to me what you think it is, because
hold
on. This is very important. Let me tell you why. The reason why this is important is because Aquinas uses terms that are not used in the same context in the same way by other thinkers. So I need to always ask you what you mean by it.
I think a real distinction.
Wait, when does Aquinas use different words in different contexts?
He does.
Could you give an example?
No, I don't want to.
That's like saying, trust me, bro. I need you to give an example.
Yeah, so sure. For example, the essence and existence distinction.
When does he give a different definition of the essence existence distinction?
Let me explain. So, for example, in the Islamic tradition, where you have like Avicenna or Ibn Rushd or Avi Rose and these guys, they have a complete understanding of that. Ibn Taymiyyah has a complete understanding of that.
So,
Avicenna does not have a different understanding of essence. No, it does not.
So
no, it does not.
It's very important.
Brother, please,
no, it does not.
Yeah, in Islamic philosophy, like the Aristotelian category of like existence is pretty much the same from.
You're just saying shit, bro.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I'm sensing an extreme disrespect from you, but I don't see why.
You're sensing a disrespect from me.
But it's okay. It's okay.
Oh,
it's fine.
I'm so sorry. Hail Mohammed Hijab.
No, don't hail to me. It's just.
Thank you. Don't worry. There's no like
lower
guns
level.
inside or anything.
Look, brother.
Just 1 second.
The point is this: because this is. Let me explain. Divine simplicity is the idea that God is not composed of anything in terms of parts or attributes even, which have a separate ontological distinction from other attributes.
No, not really.
No, it does mean that. Let me explain. Let me finish. Let me explain.
I will correct you.
No, hold on. You don't need to correct me.
No, because you're wrong.
So, for example,
you're actually wrong.
Hold on. So
like, this is the first time I'm saying that you're wrong. Like, you are wrong.
I know you say that, so you can say what you like.
I know, because it's true. You are wrong.
Do people that believe in divine simplicity believe that God has actual power?
Has actual power?
Yeah, actual power as an ontological entity separate from the essence.
He thinks real distinctions are separations.
Yeah, which is the issue, yes.
That's the issue.
So divine simplicists don't believe that God has a separate attribute known as actual power. And actual power isn't even a term. So there are two ideas of power. I'm going to explain.
Does God have actual power or not?
Again, I'm going to explain.
Yeah.
So the idea among the divine simplicists, right, is that there are two types of power. So active, not actual, active. Active power and then passive power. In Latin, it's going to be like active potentia and then passive potentia. Now, for Aquinas, God has active potentia in the highest degree. However, you were wrong when you said that divine simplicists believe that the attributes have to be separate things. No.
No. Let me ask you a question.
They don't believe
let me ask you a question.
Their problem of composition,
brother,
I'm going
please.
to just finish.
Brother, please.
I have to finish.
No, let it be a dialogue.
I know, and it's my part of the dialogue right now.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, when it comes to Aquinas believes that the problem is going to be in composition. Those two things don't have to be separate. For example, the distinction between a body and a soul. A body and a soul aren't separate, right? Even in heaven, yet they are still composite. Okay. The reason that they're composite is because they are something about the subject, and I've told you this before. There's something about the subject that is not the whole of the subject. Now, my question
brother, please,
would be in this dialogue.
Let me come back on this.
Would be if you agree with that.
Please, brother.
Back, please.
What is the knowledge of God? What is knowledge?
Knowledge?
Yeah, what's knowledge?
Knowledge for us is just going to be the possession of a form without becoming that form.
No, not for us. What does the word knowledge mean?
What does knowledge mean?
Yeah, what is the distinction between knowledge and power? Explain it to me, please.
So again, you're being vague with your question, because I explained what the term knowledge meant, and then you said, what does it mean again? And then I just explained it again.
Okay, brother, this is a simple question, of all due respect. Knowledge,
really.
It is. Because
no, otherwise everyone would have the same definition.
Well, they pretty much do actually on this.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
Well, they have a very similar definition on knowledge. Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Yes, well, please.
You have modern analyticists that have like justified belief, but then there's like
if I say, okay, wrong. Okay, I'm very wrong. No problem. When I say this person has power, is it different to saying that he has knowledge? Is it different?
On the part of him, yes. So.
In the part of him, yes. Okay.
On the part of him.
So with him, for example, if I say he has power, I'd expect or strength, something like that. I'm talking about his ability to move things, to operate his will, right? When I'm talking about knowledge, I'm talking about how much he has information in his mind, for example. Would you accept? Information.
Because again,
for example, knowledge. For example, knowledge. The classical definition of it, which I've come across, which most people agree with, is idrak al-ma'lumat, which is the idea of knowing things which are informative.
So knowing, so knowledge is knowing things that are informative.
Sorry, I made a mistake.
You did.
So knowledge is having possession of informative facts. Okay?
Having possession of informative facts.
Yeah, information.
So
having possession of information.
And again, you said this is the classical. I just want to clarify something.
Hold on, 1 second.
You said it's the classical definition,
right?
Hold on. Is that Aristotelian?
Do you accept there's a difference between knowledge and power or not?
Again, I can't answer that question because
If I say this person has knowledge and he has power, is it the same thing or different?
Hold on.
Okay, what I mean by knowledge is...
Let me
answer. Brother, please. He's asked me a question now. He's asked me a question. He said, what do I mean by... So when I say he has knowledge, say if he reads, for example, he can take that information inside. So he has possession of information. If I say he has power or strength, it means he can move situations like bench press, this kind of thing. That's the difference between the two things. Would you agree? Is that a vernacular understanding of the difference between knowledge and power?
Not exactly. That's more so like aspectival.
So whatever it is, would you accept this distinction here? In the case of this man.
But it's not going to be on the part of what you
No,
mentioned.
no. In the case of this man, is there a distinction between knowledge and power, yes or no?
You're moving away from the definition.
I'm asking a question. Is there a distinction?
because you're moving away from the definition.
Is there a
Is there
a distinction?
You're just driving
Is
a
there a
argument.
distinction between knowledge and power?
Yes, now I can get back to the point of discussion that I wanted to raise before.
Is there a distinction between knowledge
I referred to my answer before. I said yes. Now.
Yes,
again,
okay, excellent.
Hold on. I now get to respond. Now, in this... Sorry.
I haven't asked you a question yet.
You just asked me, is there a distinction between power and knowledge? Is that a question?
I haven't asked you a question yet.
Yes, you did.
No, I want to... No, but I was preambling.
Knowledge and power.
Is that a question, yes or no?
Yeah, I'm preambling. Now, with God, is there a distinction between knowledge and power or not?
I wanted to touch
with God, is there a distinction between knowledge and power or not?
On the point.
Interrupting me.
With God, is there a distinction between knowledge and power or not?
There's something that needs to be touched on.
With God, is there a distinction between knowledge and power or not?
There's a reason why it needs to be touched on.
With God, is there a distinction between knowledge and power or not?
I'm just going to continue. Because you said...
Is there a distinction?
Hold on.
Let him talk.
So you said...
You don't know?
I know, just want to...
No, can you explain? Because you've been very smart before. Is there a distinction between God?
Because
is there a distinction
he just wants to
between
drive
God and power?
He just wants to drive a script.
Knowledge and power. Is there a distinction or
Are you
not?
running? Why are you running?
I'm asking a question. How am I running? I'm asking a question.
Answer him.
How come you can't answer that?
Is
there a distinction?
Because you know you got folded at right
No, is there a question? Is there a distinction between knowledge and power?
I'm just going to continue. So,
is there a distinction or not?
Classically, is going to be an Aristotelian notion. Now,
which one?
Aristotelian. So it's going to be hylomorphic, right?
I'm asking a question. Is there a distinction between knowledge and power or not?
I already said that. On the part of a man, yes, because
on the part of God.
On the part of God?
Yes.
Yeah, on the part of God.
Aha.
Within God, there's not going to be a distinction.
Aha.
Now, again, the reason why. Because composition is going to be an issue.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, no.
So God doesn't know.
I'm going to finish
God
my question.
doesn't know things. God is ignorant.
I'm just going to finish my question.
God is ignorant.
No.
Your God is ignorant.
Yeah, thank you. Right.
Is God knowledgeable or not knowledgeable?
Now the reason is because he actually has
a composition
view of knowledge. Now again, I'm going to finish.
Is God knowledgeable or not?
I'm just going to. Your Muslim brother is telling you to let me finish. Let me complete.
Is God knowledgeable or not?
This is low.
Let me finish.
The fact that you can't let him talk is low.
No.
He's years younger than you.
He's not a Christian. He's a Muslim.
He's years younger than you.
Is power knowledgeable? Is God powerful or not?
Hold on.
Is God powerful or not?
Answer these questions. It's fine.
Is God powerful or not?
As I was explaining before,
is God powerful or not?
I think everyone else wants to actually hear the answer that I have.
Go ahead.
The idea of power is going to be the ability to actualize potency. This is the classical definition, not what you said.
Okay.
Now, the definition of knowledge is going to be the ability to possess a form without becoming the form itself.
Yeah.
This is a Thomistic idea as well as an Aristotelian idea. And this is the classical idea.
Yeah, sure.
Now, again, on the part of God, God's ability to possess forms is actually simply his active power. Now, we can conceive of those two different notions. His active power would be the ability to actualize potencies. Now, one of the potencies that is being actualized is his ability to be able to possess forms. Now, I'm saying that on the part of God, God eternally is able to possess these things. However, the distinction between God's possession of forms and our possession of forms is in us, we are able to possess some sorts of, temporal contingent form.
You only provided the definition between knowledge and power, but what he asked
it was the
is there a distinction between knowledge
and power? Yes. And I'm explaining that the distinction is going to be on the parts of the reasoning. Now the reason why, and this is something
I don't understand.
Yeah, so Avicenna had a similar idea, but he wasn't necessarily an
analogous. So there is no distinction on the, let's be clear. There is no distinction on the Thomistic view on knowledge and power in an actual sense. There is none.
Oh my gosh. Okay, look.
There is none.
So
don't say, oh my gosh, that's the case.
Knowledge and power.
Do you understand that point? That's divine simplicity. That's why they can say the Father is the Son is the Holy Spirit.
Why do you keep manipulating us? Why don't you let us talk?
I'm not manipulating anyone, man.
Why don't you let us talk? Why don't you let Christians talk? Why do you let 20-year-old Christians talk?
That's why you believe in what you do.
Why don't you let teenagers talk? Why don't you let teenagers talk?
I don't care if you're a teenager or not.
Okay, so why do you interrupt us then? Where's the respect? Talk about disrespect. So why were you complaining about me disrespecting if you don't need the respect?
The issue comes where you say that
anyway,
there is
done here?
Besides, bro.
Because
guys, wait, bro.
So
power, and
you
knowledge.
say there's no distinction.
There's no distinction. All right.
What did I also say?
So that's how we understand it
You're
now.
saying on the path to God there is a distinction.
Brother,
What I also said-
my brother,
What I also said was that on the part of the creature, the reason as to why there's going to be a distinction
that there's
is
a distinction
because
between
the definition,
Father and the Holy Spirit, is because they don't even believe
constitutive definition
in the
of knowledge,
power and knowledge
power
distinction.
are going
God
to
is divinely
signify
simple.
different
Exactly.
things.
Absolute
Now,
existence.
that's not an issue.
But that's incommensurate
The
with the
reason
Trinity.
that we have,
How can you say that
the
God is
reason that we
divinely
have
simple,
these things
but at the same time
is
have a Trinity?
Exactly.
Wait,
How
what?
can you have divine simplicity and Trinity?
Because Aquinas,
It's ridiculous.
Because Aquinas
so
argues
they don't
that-
even want to distinguish
So,
between
because
the
Aquinas
power of
actually
God
argues
and the
that
knowledge of
there
God,
can be
but at the
no
same time you can have a
relation
distinction
within
between the
Now,
Father and the
within
Son and the Holy
God,
Spirit.
for Aquinas,
It doesn't work
there
like
are
that.
three
And
categories
they know it
that
doesn't
he
work like
generally
that.
gives.
They're trying to
He
force
gives
two
divine
ideas
attributes, he
together
gives the divine essence,
which
and then he
don't
gives
work
you
You know
together.
we're gonna cut you. That's why you keep interrupting us.
Yeah, well, you know where it's going. That's why you started acting that way.
Knowledge and power in Him is really distinct in God, the only virtue.
So let me go back to the guys. Ladies and gentlemen, let me explain because a lot of it was philosophical mumbo jumbo.
So the idea of divine simplicity.
They are completely impossible to speak to, but I'll speak to the people because.
So the reason that you don't want to speak to me.
No, I was
is
speaking to you.
No,
You
you
weren't answering my
weren't. No,
question.
you
Do you
weren't.
want to give one more
What
chance?
you were doing is
One
you were
more chance.
repeating the question. So I'm going to ask you:
Go
do you
ahead.
believe God's existence is different from His essence? You said you don't know. The question that I want to ask you now is: does God have multiple attributes?
Yes.
Okay, and these things are going to be
Do you
non-identical
believe?
to
Sorry,
others.
excuse me.
to others.
Do you believe
Why?
in that?
No, answer your question.
Hold on,
No, I
Answer
answered.
your question.
Wait,
So-
hold
No,
on.
continue asking.
What do you mean? I answered. You asked a question. I answered your question
Continue
back.
asking
If by
him.
divine,
So you
don't have to answer. That's why he
Oh no,
keeps
because
I
you did the
answered
same.
yes.
Because you did the same
I
thing
answered
before.
yes.
Now you try to have a
You
sarcastic
said
dialogue.
you believe. You
So
said.
on the part of divine
Bro,
attributes.
sorry, bro,
So you don't want to talk. It's
Brother,
okay.
scared now. Oh, you scared? Why you scared?
So
scared.
All right, answer
on the
him.
part of
Answer
the
him.
hold on. So the
Answer
reason
him.
is
Please, brother.
because
Yeah,
right.
please, brother.
If you have
me off.
the attribute, for example, of knowledge.
And if I do piss you off, what's going to happen?
What's happening? There's
Hold
two
on, hold on.
Davids and one Goliath. What's going on here?
What's going to happen if I piss you off?
What's
Is there
going
going to be any
on?
consequence?
Yeah, I don't understand why this
So
is.
don't speak like that, brother.
So yeah, let's just calm
can't
down.
let him
So when it comes,
You're going to do something about it.
the idea is this,
You're going
right?
to do something about it.
Are you threatening a teenager now?
Yeah.
You threatening a
Yeah,
teenager?
yeah, I'm teenager.
Okay, so what are you
Why
gonna
are
do?
you threatening a teenager?
What are you gonna do?
You're talking to me
What are
in
you
a
gonna do?
negative
Again,
manner.
so-
You're saying if you don't do this again, so I just want to know what your consequences are. What are your consequences?
Knowledge is something.
Brother, please, you don't have any consequences.
Hold on.
Bro,
So
I'm
this
trying
is
to say,
fine.
why
You have to
can't we just
understand.
have a conversation?
how's
Why
that?
does
So
it have to descend to
knowledge,
this?
right?
Because
for you-
they're
No,
not.
I'm not.
No, I
I'm
answered-
asking him.
I
I'm
With all due
asking him.
respect,
So-
I've been very polite with these two.
I've
Yeah,
been
I've
very
seen.
polite.
Have I
so-
been polite with them or not?
No, you've not.
Okay,
Have
have
I
I
been
been
polite with them or
reasonable?
not?
I've been polite.
Right.
So I have been-
Okay.
so
I
when it
don't
comes
think
to
you have not been reasonable.
I have been reasonable, and the reason is
You've
because
asked the
what
question,
you've done
has
is you
God
keep
got
answering the
multiple
questions.
attributes?
Yes.
And I said yes. And then I
And
said,
I-
do you
then I
believe in
said-
that? Then you started talking over
Then
me.
no, what you
So
you did
what's
that
the
same
point of this
you did the
conversation?
same thing before.
Him, like,
now what you did
Alright.
before is you tried to say, are they the same? Are they the same? And then I tried to explain
Is
the classical
God's knowledge
definition.
the same as God's power?
Now again,
that's what I wanna
when we
know.
come
Yes
to
or no?
the specific attributes,
Why can't you answer my question?
I reversed what I said before. Now when it
Yes or
comes
no?
to, I reversed what I said before.
Okay, just
So
when it
you
comes
don't
to-
want to answer the question.
Because in this
don't answer the
because
question.
in this dialogue, the
don't
question
answer
that
the
needs to be
question.
asked is whether knowledge is something
Okay,
about
bro,
Allah
you're
that isn't
impossible.
the whole of Allah.
You're
Is knowledge something about Allah that isn't the whole of Allah? Yes or no?
Is knowledge
Something
when you say
about-
whole and part? What do you mean by that?
So a part is going to be in basic Mereology something about a subject that is not the whole of a subject.
Yeah.
That is just going to be
Yeah,
what
no,
a
but
part
the
is.
reason why in basic Mereology is there's 9 different definitions of a part.
Exactly.
There's 9 different usages of a part.
Yeah, sure. That's why
but
it's
they all
important to
coalesce
understand.
under the same
Because
definition
in
of a
basic
part.
it's just a basic Mereology is 9 definitions. You can say this is a part of his personality, or you can say it's a part of a cake, and they mean 2 different things.
Now the part of a cake. Hold on. Yeah,
so
that's fine.
what we were talking before, I asked you, is the
Hold
knowledge?
on, because we're talking about Mereology
I
now.
can't
No, you
right?
interrupted him. Down.
Now the reason I
I can't
interrupted him
speak
is
to him.
because he wanted to
He's
move away from
changing topic.
Mereology. He wanted to move away from Mereology to a
Yeah.
previous question.
I'm
if you
speaking
noticed.
to you, my friend.
About
You're kind
Mereology
enough. Do you want to
specifically.
speak for 2 minutes and me for 2 minutes? Is that
If
fair?
you are speaking on
Is that fair?
Mereology specifically,
Is
and you're
that
not
fair?
going to move to a different
Do you want to
thing,
speak for 2 minutes and then me for 2 minutes? Is
again,
that fair?
if you only answer the specific things that have been brought to the discussion, sure.
Maybe he was going back to that.
So if
But that had
would you
already
like to
been
speak
settled.
for 1 minute and then I speak for 1 minute?
No,
Would
that's
that be
fine.
fair?
So, no, that's fine. I can speak for
Because
1
I
minute.
can't speak to you right now. I feel like I can't discuss with you.
No,
You're an
I feel
impossible
like
person
you
to speak
can't.
with.
I feel like you can't discuss with me because there are
If-
certain
can I
notions
put
you want
my
to drive down.
Should I put this
Look, I can
watch
put a time.
on?
I can put a timer.
No,
on my
this
phone.
1 minute, one
I
each.
can put a timer on my
All right,
phone.
you
right,
go
and then we
first,
can go.
and then I'll answer
Okay,
again.
okay, look, if you
Okay,
wanna
I'm
put
going to
a
go back
timer
and
on
forth. No, it's fine. You can have
We
your
can
time.
put
You've
a
got a
timer
minute.
on, right?
Go,
So,
please.
Hold on. I'm gonna to just put a timer on the phone, right? And what I want to establish is a specific idea. So 1 minute, go, right? Now, you believe that God has multiple attributes. Now, the question I asked him was, pertaining to knowledge, is knowledge something about God that isn't the whole of what God is? Now, I then gave this reason because under Mereology, every single definition of a part, whether proper or improper parts, are going to coalesce under the same notion of that of a subject that is not pertaining to the whole. Part of a cake is going to be something about a cake that isn't the whole of a cake. Part of a tree, same thing. Parts of time, something about the general constants of time that is not the whole of time. So, to answer this very specific question, is knowledge something about Allah that is not the whole of Allah? Now, if you cannot answer the question, please explain certain reasons why. And if you can answer the question, then we can move on with that form of dialogue. Because that is the thing about divine simplicity that is trying to be denied. Composition or parthood on the part of God. Now my time's up. Okay, so you have 1 minute.
My view is there's 3 views in Islam. Okay, there's the view of the divine simplicity, which is the view of Averroes, and the view of Ibn Sina. It's the same view as espoused by Thomas Aquinas, but it's not the same. The second view is the view of the Mu'tazilis, which is that the attributes of God are within the essence of God, which is why I said it's a very important distinction. So they all believe it's all within the same essence. So the attributes and essence distinction, they don't make one, it's all within the same essence. And the third view is the view of the Ash'aris and the Hanbalis, which is that the attributes of God are ontologically separate from the essence of God. That's the view that I personally take. The view of the Ash'aris and the Hanbalis, which is the view that God has multiple attributes, all of which are separate and distinct about. For example, the knowledge of God is different from the power of God is different from the will of God, and so on and so forth. Yeah, separate. So, separate. So, my question is, do you believe that the knowledge of God is the same as the power of God, or are they different?
Time was up. So, I'm glad I'm glad you actually brought that clarification, which was not necessarily a clarification because that was already known. I'm glad you said that they were separate, because that would mean that God is going to be in a greater form of composition, right? The person of Allah, you would believe that Allah is going to be some sort of subject of reference, so a subject that you can refer to. I'll just pause my time because that was... So you would believe that Allah is a subject of reference, and because of this, the subject is going to be both the essence and the attributes. The person of Allah is going to be for you both the essence and the attributes, because you believe that the essence is separate from the attributes, as you've said. Now, because that is the case, it is still going to be part of the subject, Allah, the individual that holds, that formally constitutes both the essence and the attributes. As you can see, there's going to be a problem of composition there. So, to answer your question fairly, as I have 5 seconds, if I run a bit over time, forgive me. On the part of God, I would, for the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to ascribe to a Western view. Yeah.
All right, sure. Yeah. So I've just explained, I've answered your question very clearly. I said that yes, I believed in the essence are different from the attributes of God. There's different separate, no problem. And when I say separate, I'm not talking about separability from a physical perspective that you can.
No, I would never assume
brother,
that.
I'm my time.
Sorry. I'll pause. I would never accept that. Yeah, go on. Yeah, I paused it when I was speaking. Because I don't want to,
That's the view of, as I say, the Hanbalis and the Ash'aris and the Maturidites. The view that God has essence and He has attributes, and that the attributes are ontologically different from the essence of God. Mm-hmm. So that is my view, and I believe that the power of God is different from the knowledge of God. So we can distinguish, when we say the knowledge of God, we're talking about His ability to know or to perceive information, His power is His ability to do things. Now what I'm saying is, just as I am able to distinguish between godly power and godly knowledge, on your view of divine simplicity, is God have real power which is distinguishable, discernible from God's knowledge or not? That's all it is.
So, the question you asked is whether they are discernible or not. That's actually going to be on the part of the reasoning. Now again, the reason why they are going to be distinguishable is, as Aquinas explains, there are certain divine perfections as instituted into creatures that allow us to, by way of analogy, apply them to God. We can still say that God has power if by power we mean the ability to actualize potencies.
Sorry?
Power we mean the... Sorry, I just have to pause there.
Active potencies.
The ability to actualize potencies. I'll continue. So, because God has the ability to actualize potencies, we can ascribe that to God. And because God is able to possess forms, we can also ascribe it to God. However, the divine perfection of knowledge and power on the part of God are going to be the same thing as his existence, as Aquinas explains. Now, bear in mind, your question was on whether we can know these different things. Now, my question to you, as I have 10 seconds left, is going to be, again, whether these things are going to be something about the subject Allah that are not the whole of the subject Allah. Please answer that specific question if you can.
From one sense, yes. To answer your question, from one sense, yes. It's something about the subject Allah, which is not about the whole of Allah. In one sense, yes. The answer is yes. Because when we talk about the power of God, in one sense, we're talking about something about Allah, which is not an exhaustive list of all the things about Allah. Because when we talk about the knowledge, so the answer is completely yes, yes. Now, the second thing I'm saying to you now is, we have a very clear idea. God has power, God has knowledge, God has will. Is it not the case that on your divine simplicity view of Thomas Aquinas, that in fact there is no difference, there's no real ontological difference between power and knowledge? That's why you can say, well, actually the Father is the Son from one perspective, or the will of the Father is the will of the Son from one perspective, because all you're doing is you're playing games with divine simplicity. You're trying to have your cake and eat it both. Because in reality, you said that God is, his power is his ability to actualize potencies. How can that be the case without compositional attribution? Go ahead.
Okay, so
Jesus is God, not a Muslim.
Appreciate it.
Jesus is God, not a Muslim. Muhammad is not the
because you answered yes to that question, that would mean that you accept that God would have metaphysical parts. Now, because you accept that God has metaphysical parts, you accept metaphysical composition in God. So you're a compositionist by that view. Now, the second idea is that due to being a compositionist, your God would be metaphysically finite, because all things that are metaphysically composite would be metaphysically finite. Now, to answer the question of Aquinas and power and knowledge, as I've explained before, the distinction between real relations can still exist under Aquinas' Thomistic view. So Aquinas doesn't believe that there can't be any distinctions between the persons. He believes that the persons are really distinct. And the reason he believes they're really distinct is because in relation to the essence, the Father and the Son are going to be identical, but in relation to each other, which is what a real relation is, they can still be distinct. So that's not an issue. So just to answer the question quickly before my time runs out.
Your time is already up.
Yeah, no, I just have to.
But I'll give you some more time.
Thank you. So
exactly said what you said.
No, not exactly. So just to explain what you
changed it
asked, would you accept therefore that your God is metaphysically finite because your God is metaphysically composite?
All right, so
One second.
the kind of composition that we think would lead to that kind of conclusion is the kind of composition which means that if you remove a thing or increase a thing or put something into it, that it either goes larger if it's increased or it gets smaller when it's reduced. And that is something, for example, that if I were to, it's something which would be susceptible to decomposition, or would be susceptible to disassembly, or susceptible to what you call the principle of separability. So if something can be actually separated, we don't believe that God's knowledge can be separated from his power in an actual ontological sense. It will be that sense which would cause the conclusion that you're talking about. So we don't believe that God is temporal in the sense that you're talking about. I've answered all your questions. Now it's your turn to answer the question, which is, if you don't believe a God that's knowing and that's powerful in that real sense, then what kind of God do you really believe in? You're closer to being an atheist than you are to being a Christian, because you believe in a God with effectively no attributes. He's not powerful. Is that true or not?
So this is very important, because you try to argue the kind of composition that would go to that is if it can be taken away or added to. However, inseparability.
5 minutes.
So inseparability does not disregard parthood. For example, the distinction between a body and a soul in heaven. Bodies and souls are inseparable in heaven, yet they are still going to be parts of the subject of a human being. It can still be composite as a thing, even if they are inseparable. So your argument there has been essentially disregarded. Because the idea is that just because you have something that's inseparable doesn't mean that they're no longer parts. You can still have parts even if they're inseparable. Body and soul composition still exists in heaven, and you cannot separate the body and the soul in heaven, as I've explained. Now, on the part of a person asking here about
body
atheism,
in the heavens.
the idea, thank you. So the idea is that Aquinas addresses real relations in God. This is the answer to the question. Aquinas posits that the persons are to be defined as real relations in God, and thus simplicity is still affirmed. So you can still have real distinctions amongst the persons, and yet you still have the distinctions in regards to the essence.
Look, here's the difference between me and him. I've been very honest about my theology. He's trying to cover it up. Because the truth about his theology is this. His theology, divine simplicity, go and Google it and research it in your own self. They do not believe in actual ontological distinctions between the attributes of God, which means they believe in a God that doesn't have power, that doesn't have knowledge, that doesn't have will. They don't have real will. And I find it surprising that he was talking to me about the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit having the same will, when isn't will something that can be susceptible to composition? Is it something that he mentioned power? He said something, oh, it's the potential to actualize. Isn't that something that could be, on his idea, divine simplicity, that is susceptible to composition on his idea? So he realizes that if he goes down that route, he becomes really an atheist for all intents and purposes, or a deist. He's a deist. Because really he doesn't believe in a God with attributes, or a classical theist. That's what he becomes. And so how can a classical theist believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? 3 different things. I mean, isn't this the most flagrant composition in the world? You got 3 in 1 and 1 in 3, and you're saying you don't believe in composition. Yeah. You're talking to us about will and power? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Right, time's over. So what you were just doing is essentially complaining about the view that I actually espoused. However, that wasn't the view that I espoused at all. In relation to power and will, in terms of their formal definition, they can be applied to God, but as Aquinas says, they would have a relation to God eminently and simply. So on the part of God, God would simply be pure existence itself. That has no issue as to whether we could say, could God, qua being, do these things or have these certain divine perfections? That has nothing to do with composition there, because we're not affirming such as distinct on the part of God. However, on your part, you were clear about your compositionism, and your argument that God was not finite did not substantiate enough to conclude such. When you argued that God has parts metaphysically, that would mean that your God is metaphysically finite because of his composition of such. So could you answer why you believe that your God is metaphysically finite? There you go.
He lied by saying that I believe that God has parts. I mean, either he's not been listening or he's lying. Either are things we've observed from this behavior of this individual before. The point I'm saying to you is this. How can you be complaining, to use your term, about composition and you believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? How can you be talking to us about divine simplicity and you've complicated, right, in numeric form, the numbers of the persons of God? The only way out of this is to say, this is not an ontological distinction, this is just a numeric distinction, but all 3 are really one in every sense, in which case, you're not you don't believe in the Trinity. Sorry to say, there is no Trinity. You might as well just say what we say, is that there's only one God. But if you believe in divine simplicity, and once again, please research it. Divine simplicity, they do not believe in distinction between actual power, actual knowledge, actual will. The moment you start saying God can do, God can do this, God can do that, how can it be the case when God is not meant to have any other thing ontologically separate or different or distinguished from the essence? Go ahead.
Okay, so my timer cut out, right? I didn't set the timer before. So you're going to have to...
Where you guys going?
Huh?
Going to the event, here it comes.
So, just to clarify, okay? Right? It's very verbose, and I can do a similar thing. I'll see how I do. Now, everyone that is watching this video, please go and research divine simplicity and the various articulations of divine simplicity. As this man has admitted, he admitted that in a very strong sense, he said, yes, in a sense, they are going to be something about the subject Allah that is not the whole of the subject Allah. By this notion then and this definition, it would be, it would be that the subject Allah is going to be composite. Now, he tries to attack the notion of the Trinity and say that I should be a classical theist. Well, as he should know, most Christian missiologists, most Christians in the patristic tradition were classical theists. They were, as Augustine explains, as the Cappadocians were as well. Now, on your part, since you believe that these attributes in pertaining to the subject Allah are that which is not the whole, you therefore believe flagrantly that there is some sort of metaphysical composition. To answer the question.
Time's up.
Is it? Maybe.
So here we have it again.
Now my time was up actually. So.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so he's reiterating the point. He believes that a being with multiple attributes is compositional in the same way that I have Jenga and I disassemble it. That it alludes to the contingency of something in that same way. I'm saying prove that. If that's your claim, please prove that. I want to see the proof for that. Number 2, if you're my postulation is as follows. I'm saying that classical theism is incompatible with the Trinity. It's incompatible with the idea of a loving God.
Yes.
God doesn't love. Don't say God loves. As a Christian, you pride yourself on the fact that God loves. On divine simplicity, God doesn't love. Because love doesn't exist in God. Love is not even there. This guy who was talking to me before talked about how God has relationship with love. Could you admit now, your God is not a loving God in any real sense. Your God is not a merciful God in any real sense.
Yeah.
Your God is not a willing God in any real sense. Your God is not a powerful God in any real God. Your God is not even a God in any real sense.
When it comes to this idea now, we will answer these questions, and that's completely fine. So, when it comes to the attributes as applied to God, given their formal definition, they will simply, as I've said again, relate to God in an eminent way. If love, and you must provide a definition, if love means to will the good for someone else, then God simply needs to will the divine essence for all things that pertain to existence, and thus he has classified as really loving in a real sense. Again, your terms and notions are vague, and the reason that they are vague is because you're...
I'm so sorry.
And the reason that they are vague is because on the part of the divine simplest and the classical theist, they've already said that these formal constitutive definitions can be applied to God in exactly their relation to creatures. God can still be really loving and really merciful as is simply the justice of God as applied to creatures. Gregory the theologian says the exact same thing. By analogy, right. So in a real sense, God can be loving,
I'll give you
God
5 more
can
seconds.
be merciful, and so on and so forth.
Okay, he said that God's love is his willing to do good for something or another essence, or another being.
That's not what I said.
He's willing to be good. He said something like that, right?
Say something like that?
Yes.
That's
Now,
not what I said.
the point is if God's attribute of love is contingent on his attribute of willing, no problem. That's the view of the Ash'aris. That's no problem. But the issue is this: you've now affirmed what? The will of God. Is that not composite? Look at this. Can you imagine this guy? He's talking about the will of God, will this and that. How can God have will, which is separate from his existence and his absolute existence, and that not be composition? So you want to have your cake and eat it both. Exactly. So it's composition when we're talking about the power and the knowledge. But when he starts talking about the will, it's not composition. It's definitely composition the same way. Why not? How would you define God's will if it's not something which is attributed as an ontological status of God? It's something which is separate to this as a subject to the total of God. Is the will of God? Is it separate to the total subject or not, as his definition? Of course you can't. The thing is, if you believe in the divine simplicity, you believe in a God with zero attributes, zero actual attributes. Is that not the case?
They only affirm God's essence, but not attributes.
Now, let me explain very explicitly, right? So, like I was saying before, okay, and as I've been saying this entire time, you tried to give an erroneous notion of will, and you said that actually love is going to be contingent on the will. Now again, according to the scholastic tradition, will is just going to be the natural appetite towards the final cause. That is literally just going to be God qua being. Now all we're doing is saying, in applying these formal definitions to God, this would be the case. What we're not saying is that God is a conglomerate of ontological items that exist in him, which is what you have said. You said that these things have their own ontologies and that they are on the part of the subject of Allah, multiple entitative things. Now again, ontologies and entities are going to be treated as the same. I'm not ascribing mind or being to any of them. I am ascribing being to them because these things exist. You believe in a conglomerate of existent entities. That is the issue.
Time's up.
That is polytheistic.
Time's up.
Or
Okay.
compositionist.
All right, sure.
Go on.
Okay. He said that when he's talking about will, the definition of will is appetites towards final causes. That's what he said. Appetites towards final causes, which is akin to kind of emanationism. It's like, for example, God doesn't actually have a choice in the matter. It's like the sun and the rays of the sun. It just happens, which means that when you say that God loves you, he's not choosing to love you, he just happens to love you, just as that sun happens to express its rays on me right now. God is like your sun. That sun over there is your God, effectively. He has no will, he has no choice, he has no power, he has no knowledge. That's your God. And I believe me, this man here, He doesn't believe in that. The Christians don't believe in that nonsense because the Christians believe in a loving God. So you could try and push this onto the Christian belief. It's not even the Christian belief. They're trying to have their cake and eat it both. If you want to believe in divine simplicity, you can't have divine simplicity, Trinity, and multiple attributes, a loving God, a willing God, all at the same time. You can't have it all. You can just say that I believe in a God akin to the Son, expressing his will like the will, like the Son expresses its rays. It sums up.
Cool. So I have a minute as well, right? So
Don't mean to interrupt. What time
let's
do you
go, brother. We have to go because I have
I
to
just
take
want to
him.
make one final remark.
I have to go, brother. Yeah.
After discrediting him, you want to
One
go.
remark.
Brother,
Now again, this is one remark.
I have to go, brother.
Your God is going to be
You go.
similar like the sun,
I know,
in that
we've
it is
done that.
composite. It's okay. Your God is similar like the sun, in that it is composite metaphysically. That's it. So as you can see, he used his sneaker as an excuse to go away from the conversation. Hey, run, man. He tried to argue that God isn't metaphysically composite, even though in a real sense.